Hi, folks. Brian Trippett, your Front Porch Conservative here. I started the week by recording a video related to the film Sound of Freedom. As I mentioned in my Monday video, I'd gotten a chance to see this movie over the weekend, and I must say I was profoundly moved by how well this film was done given the subject matter that it tackled. I came across a couple of pieces of information today that I thought I'd pass along to you related to that video, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, but maybe not, about some of what I found. What am I talking about? Hang on, folks. We're going to get into all that in just 1 second. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your Front Porch Conservative. Step on up to my electronic front porch and let's talk. Now, for those of you who have not heard about the film Sound of Freedom, or perhaps you haven't seen it yet, the film deals with the story of Tim Ballard, a real-life former DHS agent who gave up his job to help work in the front lines against human trafficking, particularly as it relates to the exploitation of young children. The film is very well done. As I said in my video on Monday, I'm no highbrow movie critic, and I will leave it to others in this space to give you a full and complete review of the quality of the film. My video on Monday dealt with something that I found remarkably surprising, and that was the fact that the mainstream media was more upset about the subject matter of the film and the politics related to it than it was about criticizing the film. Well, I came across a piece of information related to that very observation that I thought I would pass on to you, because to me it speaks to not just how much this subject bothers the mainstream media and Hollywood in general, but also the lengths that they apparently are willing to go to at this point to make sure that word about this film does not get out. Does that sound a little bit heavy-handed? Well, maybe it does. But when you read what I took a look at today, you'll begin to understand why I use those particular words. So let's go to Breitbart.com. Headline: Most major film critics boycotting Sound of Freedom despite massive box office success. No reviews from the New York Times or the Los Angeles Times. In an article written by David Nuyeg, the vast majority of major film critics are boycotting Sound of Freedom, with outlets including the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, and the Hollywood Reporter declining to run reviews of the recently released anti-child trafficking drama starring Jim Caviezel. Among major news outlets, only Variety, Rolling Stone, and RogerEbert.com have reviewed the film since it opened on July 4th. Breitbart News sent inquiries to the film editors of the New York Times and the Los Angeles Times and the Hollywood Reporter. None has replied. A spokeswoman for the LA Times sent a statement: the Los Angeles Times does not review every film that's released theatrically. In the case of the New York Times, Sound of Freedom has been effectively wiped off the face of the earth. Not only has the paper of record declined to review the movie, it has not mentioned the movie in any form in its entertainment reporting, not even a box office report, a search of the newspaper's website shows. The blackout comes as Sound of Freedom outperformed expectations on opening day, placing number one at the domestic box office and outgrossing Disney's Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny while playing on far fewer screens. For the weekend, the film ranked number 3 at the box office with $18.2 million, again surpassing Indy 5 in terms of per-screen averages. It remains unclear if Sound of Freedom distributor Angel Studios made the movie available for critics prior to release. The distributor didn't reply to a request for comment from Breitbart. In the case of movies that don't screen for critics, news outlets frequently send reviewers to cinemas the day the movie opens and run a review the following day or week. Sound of Freedom currently holds a 99% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes and notched an A+ cinema score rating. Based on the life and career of Tim Ballard, Sound of Freedom stars Jim Caviezel as a Homeland Security agent who quits his job in order to bring child traffickers to justice. The movie was shelved indefinitely by the Walt Disney Company when it acquired 21st Century Fox. Producers spent the next 3 years extricating the movie from Disney's hands and raising money to release it. Now, this to me is pretty astounding. Now, let me be fair up front, okay? The author of this article does make a couple of interesting points. Number one, we don't know of a certainty if Angel Studios, who got the rights to distribution from Disney, if they sent out a request for critics to review the film or made the offer to the critics, hey, we're doing a showing at this theater at this time on this date. We would like for you to come and do a review of the film. We don't know that of a certainty. Okay. Also, we're not sure at this point if the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, or the Hollywood Reporter, if they have sent someone to see the film since it came out on July 4th, and if they are going to run a review. But we do know this. At this point, those three major mainstream media outlets have not done anything to offer a review to their readers about this film. Furthermore, the New York Times won't even mention the name of the movie. Now, that sets up some of the comments I'm going to make next. Number one, I have a very hard time believing that these three media outlets don't know about the film Sound of Freedom. Their brothers and sisters in the media have done reviews. Trust me, they all know each other. Word does get around. So you can't tell me that the Times of LA, the Times of New York, and the Hollywood Reporter don't know about this film. Why they are choosing not to offer some type of review for their viewers, who can say? I've got my suspicions, and yes, in this case, I will go ahead and tell you. Much like everyone else in the mainstream media and in a lot of Hollywood, they don't like this subject matter. They don't want to talk about human trafficking. They don't want to talk about the exploitation of children. Now, let's also be perfectly fair here. This is not one of those subjects that you want to bring up at cocktail parties in polite conversation. Oh, by the way, have you heard the latest report on the statistics about human trafficking? Okay, I get that part. But we're talking about a film that is very well done, very tastefully done, dealing with a subject matter with grace and dignity and with hope. I will admit, I was very moved watching this film, and that normally doesn't happen for me because, I'm a cynical optimist, for lack of a better way of describing my personality. But it was a great movie. Yet, mainstream media does not want to touch this. But I'm going to say something, and I'll base it on some evidence here in just a moment. The more they don't talk about this film, the more they're going to have egg on their face when this is all over with. The other piece of information that I came across today related to the box office totals from Monday, July the 10th. Take a look at this. This is from the website Box Office Mojo, and this first part is the totals for July 10th. Now, notice who's at the top? Sound of Freedom with $4 million. Now, it's a Monday. Everyone's gone back to work. Okay? People are at their jobs. It's not like they can take off a couple or 3 hours and go to the movie theater. Yet this film, with virtually no marketing budget whatsoever, beat out Insidious and Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny. Now, I bring up Indiana Jones for a very simple reason. That is a Disney Studios movie. Disney has put multi-millions of dollars into the marketing of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Yet a film made for $19 million 5 years ago, with virtually no marketing budget, just took Indiana Jones by the nose and kicked it in the rear end. $4 million on a Monday. Now, we don't have the totals for Tuesday yet. Those will come out sometime tomorrow. But I find it remarkable that this little film, this little engine that could of a movie, is kicking the butt of major studios around the country. You want some more evidence for how well it's doing? Take a look at this. This also comes from Box Office Mojo. This is from the Weekend Tally. Now, you may have heard about this piece of information. I mentioned a moment ago the film Insidious, The Red Door. came in number 1. Indiana Jones came in number 2. Number 3, Sound of Freedom. Again, this little movie with no marketing budget is hanging with the big boys and doing very well. And I'll also point out something else to you. Let's go back to the July 10th numbers for just a moment. Take a look at this. Sound of Freedom is playing just in the United States at this point. I'm not aware that it's playing internationally. It's playing on 2,852 theaters. Okay? It took in $4 million on Monday for an average of $1,400 per theater. Now, notice something about Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones is playing on 4,600 theaters. That's a difference of, what, 1,800? Yeah, 1,800 more theaters for Indiana Jones. However, notice the average per theater. Average per theater is half of what Sound of Freedom is. In other words, Sound of Freedom, which is playing on fewer theaters, is actually making more money than Indiana Jones. And Indiana Jones has more theaters. Theoretically, the Indiana Jones movie should be making way more money than Sound of Freedom, yet they're not doing it. So, where does all this leave us? Well, I've got some predictions. And I could be dead wrong about all this, but I think this is going to be fascinating to watch. One thing that I mentioned, I believe I mentioned in my Monday video, is how word of this movie, Sound of Freedom, is going to get out. It's going to get out in churches. It's going to get out in conservative circles. It's going to get out in anti-establishment media, YouTube, Rumble, etc. It'll be talked about on Twitter. It would not surprise me if over the next 2 or 3 days, Sound of Freedom scores the number 1 spot as far as domestic take each day of this week. Now, that said, well, let me back up a minute. I made a mistake. Forgot about one factor. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 opens Tuesday, today. It will take the top spot. I mistook myself. I forgot about that fact. So my apologies to you, the viewer. That said, however, it wouldn't surprise me, revising my just made previous prediction, it wouldn't surprise me if Sound of Freedom comes in number 2 or number 3 each day of the week behind Mission Impossible. I'll make another prediction. Even with Mission Impossible getting ready to swamp everybody, and it will, Mission Impossible is going to dominate the box office. Okay? That's just common sense. This is a Tom Cruise movie that's done very well. And if Top Gun Maverick is any indication of what we're going to get with Mission Impossible, this is going to be a really good film that's going to be very popular, and people are going to pay out a lot of money to see it. But that said, this little movie, Sound of Freedom, with no marketing budget, my second prediction, it's still going to hang with the big boys. And I'll argue it will still do better than Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny and its competitors. It would not surprise me if after next weekend, Sound of Freedom winds up being the number 2 best grossing movie in America behind Mission Impossible and ahead of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. But we'll see what happens. So, that's what I think. Tell me what you think. As we start to wrap up this video, please do me some favors as always. Number 1, if you are not a subscriber to this channel, please do so. Number 2, please hit the bell for notifications. I want to make sure you're always aware when we've got a new video coming out. Number 3, please leave a comment below. And number 4, please share the video around. Number 5, give me a thumbs up. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your Front Porch Conservative, and I'll see you next time.